Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in, Joe Caccera with the Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are continuing to follow the show on the live Facebook feed. We appreciate that very much. We try to keep the show consistent in terms of times, and that's around 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, if we can, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And ideally, the reason why we do that, just to remind the listeners, like to view the podcast as they listen to the podcast on Facebook, is so that we could grow the audience and keep the audience aware of when we do the show. So that's the reason why we do them at this time. So thank you again for those that follow the show and watch us on the live feed on Facebook. We appreciate that very much. We want to continue to get the podcast out to as many people as possible. So thank you, first of all, for all those that continue to share the podcast to friends, family, coworkers. We appreciate that very much. If you're watching this on Facebook, or if you're seeing this or hearing this for the first time and you haven't downloaded the podcast, do us a favor. You could download the podcast anywhere online. If you just type in Real Estate Radio Live, you could find the podcast, download it, and watch, or I should say listen to it at your convenience. And that's really the wonderful component of the podcast and the evolution of the podcast, is that typically, in general, they're shorter, less commercials, less interruptions, and people kind of get to their point. It's almost like the kind of the Netflix, to a certain extent, of broadcasting. Radio used to be really the medium to get out to people and to get your listeners up and grow listeners, was to, get on a radio station. And I did live radio for almost 8 years, and that was great. I loved the live show. I love the fact that we could take calls live and all that was really fun. But the problem is now the way people listen to information and get their information is mostly on podcast. And again, for the reason why is short, a little more simplistic. Typically they're 30 to 40 minutes instead of a full hour. And people don't have to listen to a lot of ads and commercials, although you could argue a lot of podcasts these days carry a lot of ads and commercials as well. That's another story. So anyway, I want to continue trying to get this information out to you, the consumers, on education and information. The focus is primarily on real estate. However, we're going to kick off a new show here pretty soon, and it's going to be Real Estate Radio Community. And the reason why that is we do a lot of different shows within the community, how they involve the community. So Jack Russo comes on. We do a show on a regular basis. Last year we starting something new in Silicon Valley. Jack is an attorney, and he's the managing partner for the Computer Law Group in Palo Alto, and they specialize in helping entrepreneurs, and they do intellectual property and a lot of other business legal services. However, their primary focus is helping entrepreneurs and startup companies in the very early stages. And so we did a really exciting show about that, and we had a lot of good listenership and a lot of good feedback on that. And then this year, the next series, we started Growing Your Business, and Jack has taken us through the journey of a lot of the steps and things that they've seen over the years in people growing their business. And you would think, well, gee, that's really not a topic that's tied to real estate. But my take in that the reason why we're changing up a little bit the format of the shows is that we deliver this information to consumers, and I see this as a community show. And so people live in this community. Silicon Valley is a very unique place that we live and work in, and there's a lot of interest in certainly real estate, but there's a lot of interest in other areas too. So if we could bring those in, and we do, and certain experts at certain areas, it's exciting, and we get a lot of good feedback, and we want to continue to grow our listenership, of course, to add more and more value. So going forward, you'll hear more and more kind of community-related shows that are focused on, tied in somehow with real estate too. There's always, in many cases, there's a mix in how that works. So we'll continue to do that. I want to thank those that reach out during the week and email and text about the show. We get a lot of calls and texts and emails responding to the shows, asking questions. And what makes me feel good is most of these emails and most of this communication is people that are reaching out saying, gosh, I didn't have an idea that you could buy a house this way. I didn't have an idea that you didn't need a job technically to purchase or refinance. I know that sounds funny, but you don't. I've gone through that before. People will email or call and say, gee, I had no idea that I have more rights and more questions I should be asking when I'm purchasing a home, selling a home, financing a home. So a lot of this we continue to pass along to the consumer, you that are listening to this, so that you become more educated. And it's really that simple. I always say this, I've said it for years, my goal, certainly my personal goal is to not make you, the consumer, the listening audience, the expert in real estate and financing in this industry, as much as make you more wise to your decisions and then the people you choose to do business with. And that's really my goal and objective. Now, some people become experts at everything they get involved with, and that's great too. But that is not our goal. Our goal is to provide you with enough education and information so that you feel comfortable making these decisions around your real estate. And that, more importantly, when it comes to decision time, you hopefully choose the right people to help you in real estate and financing. So today, the topic is going to be how to make a smart purchase before you sell. So how to make a smart purchase before you sell. I've done variations of this topic before, but I want to zero in and focus on it a little bit more primarily because what I see in the marketplace right now are a couple different things. And when I say marketplace, I say Silicon Valley in general, but overall, I see this throughout the nation. But we'll kind of stay primarily focused on Silicon Valley and the greater Bay Area here. So what I see is a flattening in the market. And what I mean by that is most people, if you studied the real estate market and followed it the last several years, it's been a really strong buyer's market. Right about May of last year, we saw a change take place. Right about May or June of last year, we could look back now. It's been over a year. We've started a dynamic and a change take place where it was coming off this crazy, crazy hot seller's market and then flattening out a little bit and slowing down a little bit. And then we thought, okay, well, maybe it's the end of the year. And then we got through the end of the year and we thought, okay, well, maybe after Super Bowl, right around February or so, the market will pick up and things will be a little bit different. It picked up a little bit, and right now, again, we're in this kind of flat, what I would call normal, back to a normal market. The reason why normal sounds strange to most people is because it's very rare in the last decade or so, 2 decades, that we have been in a normal market for more than a year or so. I know that sounds strange, but most people, if you've come from another area, you've sold a house or bought a house in another area, it's not uncommon to have it take you 6 months to buy a home. It's not uncommon to have it take 4 or 5 months to sell a home. I'm not saying it's ideal, but it's not uncommon in normal markets. Now, if you put your house on the market in Wisconsin or Florida or Chicago or Kentucky, I could go on and on. In some areas, they'll tell you, and most people say, hey, you could look at the data. The average time sold in this neighborhood, 4 months. And people coming from Silicon Valley may think, oh my God, what's going on? Is there a time warp here somewhere? Where did we miss out? It's a normal market. It's an average market. Normal market. That's where we are. So the reason why it's hard for us to get our arms around this is that we very typically in the Bay Area the last couple of decades, if you look at the chart, and you can't see it obviously if you're watching or if you're listening to a podcast, but if you look at the charts, go back and look 20 years, we have a pretty substantial up and down market. What I mean by that is a lot of times it's either climbing, a consistent climb, or then we had, of course, 2006, 2007, we had the decline all the way into 2010, 2011. Then it started picking back up and moving in the other direction. So when you look at these charts, you see this, some pretty sizable swings. So the reason I want to put this in perspective right now, and I'm going to give you some really good, what I think is some really good advice for those people out there either buying or selling homes. You're going to want to listen to this, and if it doesn't apply to you, please pass this along to anybody you know that's getting ready to buy or sell their home. Not just because I'm delivering it to you, because I study this every day and I look at the history and the data, and I could tell you everything is lining up right now. For you, the buyer, this is a great buyer's market. I tell people that all the time, and I see this. It's interesting. This dynamic that's taking place is I would encourage you, if I get one message across today, Stay away from the sheep and stay away from the majority of the people right now when it comes to decisions on real estate. This is where you make a difference. This is where the 5 to 10% outsmart the 85 to 90% or so of people. It's true. I've seen this so many times. Most people are hesitating on buying right now. Why? You know why? Because everybody else says you should hesitate, or everybody else says you should wait, or their neighbors or their friends or their coworkers say, or they worry about recession next year, or they worry about this next year. Don't do it. Don't fall into this trap. I encourage you, if you're out there and you're thinking about it, I've said this before, this is a great time to buy. And the reason I'm going to continue to talk about this is because I want to try to reach as many people as I can, humanly possible, to get them to understand, don't go along with the rest of the masses. You should know by now. Don't you find it interesting when it becomes a hot seller's market, everybody wants to sell their home? When it becomes a hot buyer's market, everybody wants to buy a home. Are there certain pockets every once in a while where someone could look back and say, hey, I bought in a great buyer's market, or I sold in a great seller's market? Yes, absolutely. There'll always be those. But it's a dangerous prospect to try to time the markets. So I'm going to give you some information on how to strategically make a smart purchase and really have the best of both worlds. And I'm going to get into that in more detail. Let me just finish again my kind of observation of the market. So I would categorize this market right now as just a normal market. Yes, it's come down a little bit. Yes, you're seeing home prices drop a little bit from before. And the reason why that is because they were overly inflated for a while. See, if a home was worth $1 million, this is basic economics. If the home is worth $1 million, and because of the shortage or supply and demand or the economics that are driving that price up, so if that home's worth $1 million and someone pays $1.2 million, they pay a 20% premium for that home. That's because the market demanded it, and this person wanted to pay for it one way or another. They're not a right or wrong. It's not a bad decision. It's what they decided to do. So my point is, if the market says this is worth $1 million and you pay 1.2, guess what? If that goes on long enough, that's an inflated market. That's called a market that has been driven up by supply and demand, lack of supply, right, which increases demand. That's the reason why these real estate markets take off like this and go through these periods of growth. And we just come out of that. We've just come out of that where people were paying 20, 30, 40% premiums for homes. So if someone asks me, well, Joe, that home was just listed for 1.2 and now it's listed for, 1.1 or 1,050,000. They dropped the price $150,000. I said, great. It's normal. And I explain. I don't just say that's the market. I give them the same explanation I'm giving you right now in this podcast as you're listening. That is a normal reaction to a market that's been run up the last 6 or 7 years. Most of us know, and you can't see this because my hand's projecting upward. If you're listening to a podcast, obviously, if you're watching on Facebook, you can. None of us can continue this upward, no matter what it is, stock market, housing market, anything. You can't continue that forever. It just doesn't work. There's cycles. So this is a normal market, and I see what's going on. It's clear to me, and what I mean by that is so many people now are on the sidelines and hesitating on getting in the market or selling their home and buying a home. And you know why they are? I tell you, these are the reasons why they are. And this is, to me, I hope I get this point across today. Step out of that box where you're listening to everybody and look at real data and do what's right for you. The majority of reason why people are hesitating right now, let me tell you why. These are the reasons why. Number one, because newspapers, online media, and everybody else have hints and conversations about, oh my God, is there a slowdown coming? Oh my God, is there a recession? Oh my gosh, maybe we're going to have another mortgage meltdown. Oh my gosh, maybe we're going to do this. Maybe we're going to do that. That stuff gets in your head. And shame on us for allowing that to happen. If you listen to something enough and you watch something enough every day, the studies have been shown, believe me, you're going to believe it, right? You're even going to talk like someone if you hang around them for long enough. You're going to act like someone if you hang. It's the same thing in news and information. If you fill your head with negative information on the market, guess what? You're going to walk around like a robot, and you're going to start talking about that information. It's funny, but it's not funny. It is funny. You think about it, if you listen to enough stuff, right, and you could think about this politically, right? No matter what political persuasion, we're Republican, Democrat, or whatever, you're going to find people that feel so strongly about what they believe, they're going to run around and tell everybody else about it. Hey, did you hear this? Hey, did you hear that? Did you hear there's a recession coming? Hey, did you hear that there's a mortgage meltdown? Hey, did you hear that, this, that? What I'm saying is try to eliminate the noise and deal with the facts. The facts are this. It's a normal market. The people that are making a mistake right now are the people that are standing on the sidelines, afraid to make a move because of what they're hearing. Not for what they're learning, and not for what they're reading, what they're hearing. Now, again, hopefully this will come across the right way. Most people are making decisions to not buy or not sell because of what they're hearing, not from what they're learning, not from what they're reading, and not from their research. It's what they're hearing. And so instead of pulling away from a lot of the nonsense and saying, well, Uncle George, maybe he's just all heated up and he doesn't know what he's talking about, or maybe my neighbor, or maybe there's people in the real estate industry or lending industry are talking like this too. They're all opinions. They're all opinions. This is an opinion, right? Let's not mistake anything. But this is an opinion based on someone that's lived in the Silicon Valley for over 40 plus years and has been in real estate and lending for 20 plus years. So what I'm coming to you today with is please don't get caught up in what you're hearing and then allow that to paralyze you, so you are now reluctant to make decisions that you might regret later. The facts are this. It's a normal market. Has the prices come down a little bit? Yes, but I just explained the reason why they have. They came down because they were overinflated for a while, so there's some room for that, right? So that explains the reason why they're coming down some. Some areas come down further than others, that's correct, and that's always going to happen. You're going to get more and more condos on the market, and they're going to be, it's interesting, first you couldn't keep anything on the market, now you have an overabundance, in some cases, of condominiums, because those are, when you get more supply and when you get more inventory on the market, condominiums are going to become less desirable. They just are when you have more inventory. So all these things are taking place. So here's one. Let me get into the facts now. I just wanted to really make sure I covered this dynamic that I hear, that I just feel and see what's going on in the marketplace. I talk to the consumers every day. I talk to real estate agents, lenders. I talk to everybody in this industry on a daily basis, and it's interesting what I hear. It's also interesting because I study this every day. So here are the things that I would suggest to do, how to strategically, in a smart way, buy a home before you sell your home. Now, you've heard me talk about this before, so some of it may be repeating it, but I'm going to go into a little more detail on that. A lot of people are unaware that they can buy a home before they sell their home. And I'm going to take you through a couple of examples of how you could do this. And someone might be saying, well, Joe, why would I do that? That's really not a conventional way. That's true. It's not conventional in general. But the reason I'm talking about this non-conventional thing is because, see, I want to give you a different perspective here, if you could take a step back and look. If someone says to me, Joe, I'm afraid to go buy a home because I don't know if I could sell my home, and I'm not sure if my home would sell what I need. Okay, fair assessment, right? So what I would say is, okay, let's look at another option. How about if we could show you how to buy that home in a great buyer's market and not have to sell your home right away, and you might be able to wait 6 months or a year to sell your home when you feel like the market's better to sell your home. How's that? How does that sound to you? So if you're listening to this or you pass it on to someone and you're listening, if someone said to me, I'm concerned about going to buy, Joe, because I'm concerned about whether I could get what I want for my home, and I'm concerned about recession and all this other stuff, I would say, okay, I understand that, and those are very valid feelings. But now let's talk about some ideas and options and strategies about trying to overcome that. So some of the ways you could buy a home before you sell your home. One of the simplest ways is, right, you get into contract and the person that you're buying the home for, they agree to do a contingent offer. What that means is the person you're buying the house from, you go to them and you put an offer and you say, hey, listen, I want to buy your house for $1 million, but I can't buy this house for $1 million unless I sell mine for $700,000. And the listing agent and the sellers agree that, hey, it's a good price. It's a reasonable price, and they're out giving us what we want. I'll tell you what, we'll give you 60 days or 45 days or whatever to sell your house, and we'll do a contingent offer. So that's one way. That's the one way, and that's, typically in normal markets, that's not bad. That happens on a regular basis. Another way to do it is, again, this is just another strategy. If you go into contract to purchase a home, and in many cases, the investors, we work in this industry in lending. That's what I do, residential financing. That's part of what we do in this real estate business. If you go into contract and then you get your house on the market right away and you prepared your home to list before you even go into contract, right? And you do a non-contingent offer, but yet you put your home on the market right away, you have it you have it ready to go, boom, 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 boom. And you get an offer on your home and you don't take any contingencies, if you could follow me here. Most of the investors, most of the lenders, depending on who you work with, you have to be careful. We do this, but a lot of lenders don't. If you have all the conditions, or I should say the contingencies released on the sale of your home, we will remove and release all those liabilities for your future purchase. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little confusing, but my point is, if you go into contract on a purchase, the minute you get someone to agree to buy your home and you're in contract to buy your home and they've released all contingencies, okay? So let's say you go into contract and you're going to purchase a home as of November 15th and it's the 1st of October, 45 days. And right away, boom, you put your house on the market, you get an offer the next day, and you take a 30-day close of escrow with no contingencies on the sale of your home. The minute we, the investor, the lenders, see that contract that say that you have no contingency on the sale of your home, we remove those liabilities. So you no longer have to worry about this issue of a contingent offer. That's another way to do it. A more creative way, one that I'm using on a regular basis, and it's still amazing to me how many real estate agents don't have a clue about this program and how many consumers don't. It surprises me how many real estate agents don't. And this is the cross-collateralized program. The cross-collateralized program. So in simple terms, what does this mean? You're crossing property, and then we're going to talk about assets in a minute, but let's take cross property first. So when you collateralize something, I'll give you an example. You have a home and it's worth $1 million, and you owe maybe $100,000 or $200,000 on it. You're looking to buy a home for $1.5 million, but you want to put a non-contingent offer in, and you want to be able to do this before you sell your home. We could do that. The reason we could do it is because you have so much equity in your departing residence. What we do is basically cross your existing property. When I say cross, is we look at both properties and we put a lien on the existing property, and we use that property, if you will, as a virtual down payment, temporary virtual down payment. Someone might say, well, how do you do that with equity? You can. That's this cross program. So in essence, this is a little hard to explain. It's tougher, obviously, when you're listening versus doing visual demonstrations. That's why I encourage people to call me if you have more questions about this. But we look at the equity in your exiting property, and we leverage that equity to help you make the purchase. In many cases, we're able to give people 100% financing on that $1.5 million because of the equity they have in their home, their existing home. Now, this is a temporary loan. No one's going to do 100% financing long term. We get that. But it's understood that it's a temporary loan. You're purchasing a property. And then when you sell your property, you're going to come back in and get permanent financing on this. This is a little complicated, I understand, for the average person, and it should be, because it's not something you do every day. It's actually complicated for people in my industry and the real estate agents. They have a hard time, lenders and real estate agents, understanding this. But I could tell you it's one of the coolest programs out there. I use it on a regular basis, and it helps a lot of people. Now, it's not for everyone. It's just not. And so I'm not suggesting that this is a win-win for everyone. You may not have enough equity in your property. You might not make enough money to potentially do this. So there's a lot of reasons why you couldn't do it. But I'm suggesting that a lot of people don't know about this program, and I would suggest that a lot of people, if you've owned your home for at least 7 to 8 years here in the Bay Area, you probably have a fair amount of equity in it. So you might be able to exercise something like this. This is a great program. The other thing I'll talk about is cross-collateralization. That's one. The second one is to pledge assets. Someone might say, well, explain that, Joe. So what we could do is just the way I just described and how we use equity in a home to cross-utilize and collateralize that property. We could do the same thing with assets. And let me explain that. So let's say you have $2 million in investable assets with any, Charles Schwab, whoever it is, Merrill Lynch. We could look at those assets and say, okay, we could take a portion of those virtual assets. The money's not coming out. Let me just make sure it's clear. You're not liquidating money. What you're doing is you're basically putting a temporary lien on those assets. And let's say we need $500,000, but you don't have the cash, or you don't want to liquidate. We could use $500,000 virtually from those assets, those $2 million assets, use it as a temporary down payment to make the purchase of your home. And then when you go to sell your home, or sell stock when you want to, or whatever you do, when you're ready to do that and reconcile this loan and go to permanent financing, then you do it. Again, let me quickly go through this. So we have a program that's called Pledged Assets. Let's take the same situation. Let's say you're trying to buy a house before you sell your home. And let's say you don't have enough equity in your home. And let's say you're uncomfortable doing this cross program. And you have $2 million in investable assets. I'm just using this as an example. You want to buy a $1.5 million house. You really only have maybe 10% cash sitting around because the rest of the money is coming from the sale of your home, right? So let's say you have $150,000, 10% down, and that's it unless you sell your home. And we look at those assets and we said, listen, because you have $2 million, we could access a virtual down payment in essence from those assets. And if you could follow this here, right? So we're going to take $500,000 or $600,000 because we're leveraging those assets. Now we're going to be able to make, in essence, virtually a bigger down payment. You could buy this home, okay? And the investor is temporarily looking at those assets as a down payment. And someone still might be going, Joe, this is confusing. And it's a bit confusing, don't get me wrong. So just so I'm clear, these assets you don't have to liquidate. You don't have to sell them. You don't have to move them. What they do is they look at them and they put a lien, if you will, on them. So that says, hey, for the next 6 months or until you sell your home, you can't take that account below this amount because we just leveraged $500,000 from this account. So in essence, they're using your assets as a temporary play on this real estate. These are the types of things you could do, a person could do. And a lot of people out there, both consumers, real estate agents, lenders, they don't know that this is available. They don't understand it. And the reason I want to continue to talk about this and get the information out is that it's important that everybody understands programs exist. There's smart and more options. There are better options to buy a home before you sell your home. There's a lot of different creative things you could do. And as always, if you have more questions, give me a call, check in. You know how to reach me, joe@reradiolive.com. You could text or call 408-838-9060. Another way to get a hold of me there, reradiolive.com. There's a great options out there, and I will say it again as I close out the show today. It's a great time. It's a buyer's market. If you're on the fence or you have any questions, let us know. We're here to help, and we look forward to doing that. This is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thanks again for tuning in today. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.